There is something sacred about silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness. The kind of stillness that lives at the bottom of the ocean, where time slows and memory lingers like a forgotten current. Tonight, we begin with a drop. Just one, suspended in the mind like a question. This drop is not new. It is impossibly old. It may have once been ice in a comet drifting beyond Neptune, or a mist in the breath of a dinosaur. It may have circled the globe in a monsoon storm 10,000 years ago, or rested quietly in the tear duct of a newborn child. Water is the great recycler. Every molecule you drink tonight may have passed through cloud, river, blood, and stone. It has no beginning, no true end, only motion. Science tells us that the water on Earth is ancient, some of it more than 4 billion years old. It came riding on asteroids, locked in crystal, or welled up from the mantle, steaming from volcanic birth. But it has remained, through every extinction, through every rise and fall of empire, through every memory we forgot to keep. And yet, we ask a question softly. Can water remember? Not metaphorically, but truly. Does it hold some essence of the moments it touches? We think of memory as something stored in neurons, electric, chemical, fleeting. But what if memory isn't exclusive to minds? What if the universe itself is a kind of recorder, a sensitive field of impressions where nothing is ever fully lost? Water is receptive. It shapes to its container. It carries flavor, emotion, even the scent of seasons. It vibrates to sound. It responds to light. It dissolves more substances than any other liquid in existence. A universal solvent, a gatherer, a keeper. Every rainstorm that falls connects sky to soil in an invisible handshake. And in that handshake, stories pass. The dust of deserts, the soot of cities, the pollen of ancient forests, the DNA of forgotten species. Water flows, and in that flow, it mingles, mixes, and absorbs. It becomes part of everything it touches. And maybe, just maybe, it carries a faint echo of it. We do not speak here of pseudoscience or fantasy, but of poetic possibility, of what it means to believe that nature is not mute, that it observes, that it remembers. Long before the first story was ever told, before the first myth or song, water was moving, pooling in craters, dripping from leaves, freezing in starlight. It was the first witness. It has always been the witness. Imagine, for a moment, the vastness of time, not as a line, but as a cycle, a spiral, an oceanic rhythm with no clear start. Only the tide, pulling memory forward and back. And in that rhythm, water dances. It remembers what the soil forgets. It holds what the winds discard. It flows through every age, through every body. It does not speak in language. It speaks in pattern, in repetition, in return. And so, when we gaze out over the sea, when we hear the hush of waves curling into themselves, perhaps we are not just hearing noise. Perhaps we are listening to an archive, a resonance of everything that ever lived, everything that ever ended. The ocean does not hurry. It does not cling. It simply moves. It accepts. It carries. And in this way, it reflects something fundamental about time itself, that it is not always linear, that it is not always loud, that sometimes it is soft and slow and circular, like the slow turning of the earth beneath water's cradle. So tonight, we begin not with certainty, but with wonder, not with answers, but with questions, the kind that do not keep you awake, but invite you gently towards sleep. Does water remember the stars that cooled it, the hands that touched it, the lives that bathed in it, wept into it, were buried beneath it? Does it carry emotion? Not in the way we do, not in words or ideas, but in impressions, in vibrations, in the tiniest echoes of what once was. If memory is more than neurons, if the universe is alive in its own way, then water may be more than water. It may be the memory of everything. And so we listen to the stillness beneath the noise, to the drop before time. There is an ocean inside you, not a metaphor, not a poetic turn, but a biological truth. Your blood is a saltwater river. Your cells bathe in a fluid that mirrors the chemistry of ancient seas. We often forget that we are not just made of water, we are water, shaped into form, suspended in a fragile equilibrium between salt and breath. The human body is a vessel, roughly 60% water by mass. But in motion, in memory, it is more than measurement. The amniotic sea you once floated in, before lungs, before language, was your first ocean. Warm, protected, echoing with the muted heartbeat of a body larger than your own. And even before that, long before your mother, or her mother, or her mother's mother, your ancestors once swam freely in Earth's shallow waters. Organisms without spine or voice, cradled by waves and warmed by sun. The chemistry of your body remembers that. The saline in your blood mirrors the composition of the oceans from which all complex life emerged. Sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride. These elements drifted in Earth's early oceans before they ever flowed in veins. Science tells us this is no coincidence. The inner sea of the human body is a biological homage, a continuation of the first waters that gave rise to consciousness. In you, the ocean never left. It simply became quiet. It folded itself into organs and tissues, into tears and sweat, into the quiet shimmer of skin under moonlight. Each heartbeat sends pulses through an internal tide. Each breath evaporates droplets, returning a part of you to the sky. Each moment of sleep, your body cycles water, filtering, balancing, remembering. You are not separate from the ocean. You are its offspring. Even your thoughts, the silent language flickering between neurons, depend on water. The transmission of impulse, the diffusion of neurotransmitters, the cleansing of memory during dreams, all require this silent, flowing medium. Without water, there is no awareness, no imagination, no you. And yet we often imagine memory as a thing held only in the mind. But perhaps your body remembers more than your thoughts allow. Perhaps your cells carry echoes, imprints of ancient tides, of marine light filtering through salt water to meet soft eyes long extinct. Perhaps you are more ocean than you dare to know. Close your eyes. Feel the pulse in your fingertips. Feel the warmth behind your eyes, the quiet currents beneath your ribs. This is the sea, still alive, still speaking. And just like the tides, you rise and fall. Your moods shift like currents. Your emotions swell and ebb. And though we speak of them as storms and calms, they are in truth waves, moving through an inner ocean deeper than words. This is not just poetry. It is rhythm. It is biology. And it is memory of a time when life was liquid, when the first spark of awareness flickered in the deep. Even now, your body responds to the moon. Subtle, perhaps, but the moon's gravity, which stirs oceans into tides, also stirs the water in your tissues. Not enough to lift, but enough to influence. Sleep, emotion, fertility, rest, all are rhythms once tied to the moon, and therefore to water. You are, in essence, a tide that walks, a moving vessel of ancient seas. And so the question lingers. If the oceans can remember, might you too carry a deeper memory? Not of this life, or even of human life, but of water, its movement, its knowledge, its ancient pull toward union. Perhaps the ache you feel beside the sea is not just longing. Perhaps it is recognition. Water calls to itself. That is its nature. Droplets seek droplets. Currents seek other currents. As within, so without. You are not lost in this universe. You are carried. You are suspended. And the ocean within you remembers how to float. Before there was water, there was only fire. The early earth was no cradle. It was a furnace. Molten rock churned in darkness. No sky, no sea, no silence. Just chaos. But even then, in that storm of birth, water was waiting. Not as a stream, not as a drop, but as frozen memory, locked in stone, sealed in ice, drifting silently between stars. Some scientists believe water came from comets or asteroids, time capsules of frozen hydrogen and oxygen, crashing into the newborn planet in a violent rain of origin. Others argue it rose from within, that Earth itself gave birth to it, as volcanic breath turned to steam, and steam condensed into clouds, and clouds wept the first oceans. Either way, the result was the same. One day, after fire and silence, rain began to fall, not for hours or days, but for centuries. Relentless, endless, a baptism not of spirit, but of matter. And as the rain fell, the earth cooled, the surface calmed, and the first oceans gathered in the craters of ancient wounds. Can you imagine that moment? A world of stone suddenly softened, water pooling in basins, steam rising from newborn seas. The planet exhaled, and the ocean was born. It may have taken millions of years, but to the earth, that is only a breath. From that breath came liquid time. Because the moment water appeared, so did the possibility of memory, of flow, of reaction, of life. In the dry, sharp landscape of planets like Mercury and the Moon, there is no memory, only impact and erosion. But on Earth, water smoothed the scars. It carried minerals, carved canyons, softened stone. It made a world not just livable, but rememberable. Water became the medium in which time could move, not simply as change, but as continuity. We measure time in rotations, in orbits, in decays. But in water, time becomes rhythm, pulse, cycle, evaporation and return, freezing and thawing, flood and drought. Water is the first great recorder, not in written language, but in repetition. Every ocean current today still follows ancient pathways set in motion eons ago. Currents born in a younger Earth, still flowing, still pulsing with planetary breath. When we ask, where did water come from? We are really asking, how did time begin to flow? Because in water, time does not break. It bends. It returns. It carries. A molecule of water may pass through 1,000 forms: ice, steam, cloud, blood, and yet remain itself. It is the shapeshifter of memory, the silent archivist of everything it touches. And if it came from space, from comets older than our sun, then some of the water on this planet may have witnessed the birth of light itself. It may have circled dead stars, or waited in the silence between galaxies, long before Earth had a name. And if that is true, then the ocean is not just Earth's history, it is cosmic history. It remembers stars before they collapsed, and dust before it formed planets. It remembers stillness deeper than silence, and movement older than time. So when you watch a wave crash, or hold a cup of water in your hand, you are not just looking at a substance. You are looking at an elder, an ancient traveler, a thread that runs through the entire tapestry of existence. And it asks no recognition, no praise, only motion. Water does not need to remember in the way humans do. It simply continues. And in that continuity, it carries. We often imagine memory as something stored in shelves, in archives, in the folds of a brain. But water remembers through change, through movement, through return. A droplet evaporates, travels, condenses, and falls again. And in that cycle is story, what it touched, where it passed, how it shaped and was shaped. In this way, water is not just passive, it is an agent of memory, an animator of form, a deliverer of time. So when you lie still tonight, listening to the imagined hush of oceans in the dark, know this: the water within you came from stars. It came from steam. It came from silence. It has flowed through planets and bones and clouds. It is not new. It is never new. And it has never forgotten how to move. The ocean never sleeps. Even when it seems still, it listens, speaks, remembers. In waves. Waves are the language of water. They carry no words, and yet they say everything. They are the breath of the sea, the pulse, the syllables of movement written in liquid. Each wave is born from energy, but shaped by memory, the wind that pushed it, the depth beneath it, the pull of the moon. A wave that breaks on a distant shore may have traveled for thousands of miles, never forgetting the storm that birthed it. And in that motion, there is history. A wave is not just water. It is energy passing through matter, echoing across the surface of time. Even the gentlest ripple is a continuation, a resonance of something once stirred. In this way, waves carry messages not just between shores, but between moments. The sea remembers motion the way a violin remembers touch, not by clinging to the hand that played it, but by vibrating in response. Sound, too, travels in waves, faster, clearer, deeper underwater than in air. Whales sing across entire oceans, their voices refracted by layers of temperature and salinity. A single call may travel thousands of kilometers, reaching ears never seen. Is this not memory? Is this not transmission? A song composed in one corner of the sea, heard in another, a delayed echo of life. Waveforms in water mirror the waveforms of thought, the undulation of alpha rhythms in the brain, the rise and fall of emotion, the quiet roll of memory as it emerges from sleep. Perhaps this is why waves calm us, because they speak a language we know without knowing how. The rhythm of waves matches the rhythm of breath. Inhale, exhale, swell, collapse. Even tsunamis, those monstrous, silent forces, begin with displacement. A memory of motion deep below, an earthquake, a landslide, a sudden change. The ocean does not forget. It transmits. And it doesn't need the shore to arrive. It carries the impression of what happened, without judgment, without pause. We might think of waves as momentary, fleeting, here then gone. But the truth is more subtle. Waves do not end when they vanish from view, they transform. The energy disperses, folding into other currents, other patterns. The vibration becomes a part of the whole. Just as a thought becomes memory, a ripple becomes sea. And the ocean, in its entirety, becomes a resonance, a living, breathing echo of everything that has ever touched it. There is no perfect stillness in the sea. Even on the quietest day, motion persists. Microcurrents whisper just below the surface. Wavelets tickle the air. This movement is not random. It is relational, responding to the moon, to pressure, to heat, to distant storms, to things the water cannot see but still feels. And isn't that what memory is? The echo of something no longer present, still alive in form. In wave dynamics, there are equations, formulas that can predict rise and fall. Science can map their height, their energy, their speed. But it cannot measure their message. It cannot feel the memory in the motion. Because some languages are not meant to be read, they are meant to be felt. The sea speaks in touch, in rhythm, in resonance. A child hears a shell to her ear and believes it holds the sea. And she is not wrong. It holds the memory of sound, the shape of echo, the illusion of presence carried in form. Just like the sea, just like the mind. The wave that breaks is not the end. It is simply the continuation of motion into silence. And silence, too, speaks. So when you hear the gentle crash of waves in your imagination, whether in sleep or stillness or memory, know that you are hearing a language older than words. The ocean speaks, not in voice, but in rhythm, not in sentences, but in repetition. And it remembers, through waves, through motion, through time. Before breath, before bones, before even the first cell, there was water. And within it, something stirred. We call it the primordial soup, but it was more than a metaphor. It was chemistry made fertile, a warm tidal of molecules dancing in sunlight, struck by lightning, spun by currents. From these waters, life emerged, not in a sudden gasp, but in a slow, unfolding dream. A sequence of reactions that became patterns, and patterns that became purpose. Why water? Why not methane, or lava, or crystal? Because water is both patient and playful. Its molecular structure allows for flexibility, for bonding, for breaking, for rejoining again. It dissolves, carries, mixes. It invites interaction. Water holds potential. It brings opposites together, acids and bases, heat and cold, order and chaos. And in doing so, it makes room for emergence. Scientists still debate exactly how life began, but nearly every theory agrees. Water was there, not just as backdrop, but as participant. RNA strands may have first replicated in shallow pools or hydrothermal vents. Lipid membranes may have formed bubbles, accidental cells. Simple structures may have learned to preserve themselves, to grow, to divide, to remember. This remembering was not like ours. It was not personal, not emotional, but it was memory nonetheless. A chemical loop that retained structure, a function that returned when repeated. In this way, water became the first archivist of purpose. It is no coincidence that all known life still requires water to function, not just to drink, but to think, to metabolize, to heal. Even today, the very spark of thought, the firing of neurons, the balancing of ions, the transport of signals across synapses, all rely on water's invisible dance. So we must ask, if water helped birth the first cell and later the first mind, does it carry not just life, but the seed of awareness? Does water simply support consciousness, or was it the first to shape it? The earliest forms of life were unaware, but they moved with purpose. They responded. They remembered. A molecule moved toward light. Another recoiled from acid. Over time, these reactions became decisions, and decisions became patterns of behavior carried forward through time. Water held these patterns. It cradled the codes. It allowed replication. And in the tidal churn of billions of years, those patterns became more complex. First bacteria, then multicellular beings, then nervous systems, then minds. From sea sponges to cephalopods, from fish to philosophers, the thread of water runs unbroken. Even today, our brains, soft, wet, electrical, float in cerebrospinal fluid. They drift in an internal sea, echoing the one outside. Is it possible that the ocean dreamed us into being? That consciousness was not an invasion, but a continuation? That when we reflect, it is not just the brain at work, but the water within it. We often think of water as passive, but what if it is responsive? What if it carries more than heat and salt? What if it carries intention? Some researchers have speculated that water may exhibit a kind of memory, a tendency to retain the energetic imprint of what passes through it. Though controversial, this idea touches on something older than science, the belief that water is alive. Indigenous traditions, mystical philosophies, even early medical systems have long seen water as more than liquid, as a medium of connection, as a transmitter of life force. Perhaps they were not wrong. Perhaps science is only now beginning to remember what the earth never forgot. Because consciousness did not appear in a vacuum. It rose from relationship, from interaction, from the fluid balance between chaos and order. And water, above all, is relational. It responds to every stimulus. It flows toward balance. It nourishes, shapes, heals. So when the first flicker of awareness stirred, when life first looked, first reached, first chose, it did so through water. And that moment, that ancient recognition, was the beginning of memory, of self, of soul. We are not separate from that lineage. We carry it. We are it. Every time you dream, your brain floats gently in its fluid cradle. Every thought, every feeling rides on a wave made possible by water. It is your internal ocean that allows you to wonder at the external one. So when you look out across the sea and feel something stir, a deep, quiet knowing, it may not be your mind at all. It may be your water, remembering where it came from. Beneath the surface of the sea, time sleeps. Beneath the tides, there are cities no maps remember, streets no feet walk, and temples whose prayers have long dissolved. We speak of lost civilizations as if they were stories, as if they lived only in the imagination. But the sea has swallowed more than myth. Consider Doggerland, a landmass that once connected Britain to Europe, a green world of rivers and forests, where mammoths roamed and people gathered. 10,000 years ago, it vanished beneath the rising tide. No war, no fire, just water, silent and slow, a drowning so vast that the earth barely noticed. And yet, the ocean remembers. In the North Sea, fishermen still pull bones and tools from the depths, fragments of lives once lived under open skies, buried now beneath silt and silence. Further east, off the coast of India, divers have found structures, steps, columns, avenues, ruins that suggest a city once stood there before the sea claimed it. Some say it is Dvaraka, the legendary city of Krishna. Others speak only in caution, in data and carbon dating. But beneath their careful language, a quiet awe remains. What else lies beneath the waves? What stories do the sediments whisper to those willing to listen? And always, in the background, is Atlantis, a city spoken of by Plato, submerged by the gods, lost to pride or punishment. A myth, perhaps, but myths often echo something real. Atlantis may never be found, but its story speaks to something deeper, the human fear of forgetting, the quiet truth that even greatness can disappear beneath the tide. The sea is a patient eraser. It wears down stone, dismantles architecture, pulls murals into sand. But it does not destroy without trace. It keeps pieces. It swallows gently. And in this way, the ocean becomes an archive, not of paper and ink, but of shape, of mineral, of position. A column fallen in the dark still holds the memory of its upright life. A carved stone buried in coral still whispers of hands that shaped it. Even if no one hears, the ocean listens. In sediments, scientists find layers, each one a chapter. Volcanic ash, fossilized pollen, microscopic remnants of tools and dwellings. The ocean may not speak our language, but it has kept a record, not for us, not for discovery, but simply because that is what water does. It carries, it settles, it preserves. And so the drowned worlds remain, not gone, but sleeping. Perhaps the sea is not graveyard, but library, a vast blue vault where forgotten civilizations lie intact, in form if not in voice. What was once land is now seabed. What was once laughter is now the hush of currents through broken rooms. And yet, the presence is there, a quiet hum in the bones of the ocean. Even today, satellite scans reveal strange shapes on the seafloor, grids too regular, lines too deliberate. We hesitate to interpret. We fear the edge of speculation. But wonder stirs beneath the caution. How many cities drowned when the ice age ended and the waters rose? How many cultures vanished, not by war, but by wave? And what did they leave behind in the ocean's care? Could water hold not just their ruins, but their rhythm, their music, their breath, their beliefs? Could it carry fragments of sound, vibrations absorbed into salt and current? Could the sea remember what the land forgot? We do not know, but the question lingers, like a shipwreck beneath the surface. Perhaps the ocean is not merely indifferent. Perhaps it holds the weight of these lost lives, not as sorrow, but as continuity. The same water that rushes over coral now once kissed the steps of vanished temples. The same tide that laps at your ankles once swept through ancient ports, carrying spices, dreams, and language. Time is not lost at sea. It drifts. It settles. It waits. So when we look out over the open water and feel a hush we cannot name, it may be because something beneath us still remembers, not in words, but in presence, not in clarity, but in silence. And silence, too, can be a form of memory. Water has no shape of its own, yet it takes the shape of everything. It conforms, reflects, dissolves, adapts. And in this endless flexibility, a question arises. Can something so fluid also retain? The idea seems paradoxical. How can water remember if it is always changing? And yet, beneath its surface chaos, there may be order. Let us begin not with certainty, but with curiosity, with the quiet mystery of molecular structure. A single molecule of water is simple: two hydrogen atoms, one oxygen, H2O. But when gathered in billions, their simplicity gives way to complexity. Water molecules bond to one another through fleeting electric attractions, creating patterns, lattices, clusters, intricate architectures that shift and shimmer too fast for the naked eye. These arrangements are not random. They respond to temperature, pressure, vibration. They change when stirred, when frozen, when spoken to, some say even when observed. This has led some scientists to a provocative idea that water may hold structural memory, that even after a substance has been diluted beyond physical trace, the water may still remember it through the pattern of its molecular bonds. The idea is known as water memory, and it remains one of the most controversial in the world of science. Some researchers have claimed that water can retain the energetic imprint of substances once present, that its molecular structures can reflect a history of what was, long after the material is gone. Others reject the idea outright. They call it pseudoscience, a ghost story told in the language of chemistry. And perhaps they are right. Perhaps the evidence is flawed, the mechanism misunderstood. But perhaps the deeper mistake is imagining that memory belongs only to brains. In nature, memory exists in many forms. A tree remembers light. Its rings are records. A crystal forms from repeated structure. A canyon is carved by persistence. Why should water be exempt from this quiet intelligence? It does not store memory as humans do, not in stories or symbols, but it holds pattern. It reflects influence. It reorganizes in response to touch, sound, thought, heat, vibration. It listens. There are experiments, unsettling, beautiful, where ice crystals are flash frozen after being exposed to music, words, or silence. Some claim the resulting patterns differ, that harmony creates symmetry, while anger creates chaos. Can molecules hear? Can they feel? Or is this simply coincidence, interpretation seeking meaning? We do not claim answers here, only wonder. Because even if water cannot remember in any traditional sense, its behavior still hints at something responsive, something attuned. It is more than a passive medium. It shapes and is shaped. Perhaps memory does not require neurons. Perhaps it is the universe's way of folding experience into the fabric of matter. In quantum physics, particles behave differently when observed. Intention changes outcome. Presence changes pattern. Why would water be any different? It is, after all, the most interactive substance on Earth. It touches everything, connects everything, flows through all. It is in the soil, the sky, the seed. It moves through the body, the brain, the cell, carrying not just nutrients, but maybe information. If even one part of water's structure can be altered by influence, by vibration, by voice, by presence, then we must ask, does it hold those changes? Does it carry them forward, even for a moment? And if so, is that not a kind of memory? Not the kind we write in journals, but the kind the earth might use to know itself. Not storage, but resonance. Not recall, but response. There is a humility in not knowing, in standing before the most familiar substance and realizing it is still mysterious. We have sent probes to distant planets, decoded genomes, split the atom, but we still do not fully understand the water in a raindrop. So perhaps we should listen more closely, not just with instruments, but with reverence. Because the water you drink tonight may carry the vibrations of 1,000 voices. It may have kissed ancient stone, tasted starlight, felt joy. It may have been changed, however subtly, by everything it ever touched. And in those subtle changes, it may hold a record of the world, not in ink, not in code, but in structure, in shape, in rhythm, in the trembling bond between hydrogen and oxygen. Memory, perhaps, is not always something to be retrieved. Sometimes it is something that simply remains. When water stops moving, it begins to remember. And when it freezes, it becomes a witness. Ice is water slowed to stillness, a frozen pause in the flow of time. And in that pause, it listens. High above the earth, in the silent dominions of Antarctica and Greenland, vast glaciers stretch across the landscape, miles thick, thousands of years old. They are not merely frozen wastelands. They are libraries. Each snowfall is a page. Each season, a sentence. The weight of winter after winter compresses the snow into ice, layer upon layer, year after year. The deeper you go, the older the ice becomes. A journey downward is a journey backward in time. Within these icy layers, trapped bubbles of air rest quietly, perfectly preserved, like time capsules of ancient breath. Scientists drill deep into these glaciers, extracting long cylinders called ice cores, frozen timelines that stretch back hundreds of thousands of years. They analyze the gases within the bubbles, carbon dioxide, methane, oxygen isotopes. From this, they read the story of Earth, its shifting temperatures, its moments of upheaval, its long, slow breaths between glacial ages. Imagine a bubble of air pressed into the ice 400,000 years ago, carried the sky of a different Earth. An Earth with mammoths and saber-toothed cats, with no cities, no humans, no names. And yet, the air from that world still lives in the ice, still waits. The ice records more than just gases. It holds volcanic ash, cosmic dust, pollen from plants long extinct. When Mount Tambora erupted in 1815, its ash circled the globe, changing the color of sunsets and cooling the earth. Its signature is still visible in ice cores, a dark band marking the moment the sky turned strange. In this way, Ice is not passive. It archives, not by intention, but by nature. It catches what falls. It does not release. It holds. Even the faintest traces, atomic remnants, radioactive particles, whispers of distant stars, become part of the icy record. It is strange to think that water, in its most inert form, can become the most faithful historian. Where books decay and memories fade, glacial ice endures. It does not forget. It cannot. The past sleeps in its cold heart, waiting for those who know how to ask. And when asked, it speaks. It tells us that the earth has changed before, that warmth comes and goes, that life adapts and suffers and returns. It tells us that extinction is not new, that survival is not guaranteed. And yet, it does so without fear. Ice has no urgency. It moves in epochs, not hours. Its patience humbles us. To hold a core of ancient ice in your hand is to touch a breath older than language. It is to feel time condensed into silence. It is to stand in the presence of memory beyond mind. Water, frozen, becomes still. Stillness becomes memory. Memory becomes truth. And yet, the ice is melting. The great glaciers are retreating. What took 100,000 years to preserve is disappearing in decades. The archive is dissolving. The library is weeping. And with it, we lose not just stability, but story. We lose data, yes, but more deeply, we lose the echoes of other worlds. There are cores we will never drill, bubbles we will never read, breaths we will never know. Even now, the past is bleeding into the sea. Still, some ice remains, and as long as it does, it will continue to keep watch, holding the records of a living planet's memory. We often think of time as something that passes, something that vanishes. But in the quiet layers of the glaciers, we see another possibility. That time can be kept, that moments can endure, that water, when stilled, can remember. And in that stillness, we find something sacred. Not merely knowledge, but presence. Not merely history, but inheritance. What ice gives us is not just data, but a reminder that the earth has always kept memory. That forgetting is not the default. That somewhere, deep in the cold, a breath is waiting for us to listen. Beneath the surface of the sea, there is a rhythm. Not the crash of waves or the pull of tides, but something quieter, deeper, slower. It is the molecular pulse of the ocean, a choreography so vast we rarely feel its beat. And yet, it shapes the life of the planet. The ocean is not static. It circulates. Warm waters drift toward the poles. Cold waters sink and creep toward the equator. Salt concentrations rise and fall, creating delicate balances that determine weather, migration, life itself. This slow swirl is called the thermohaline circulation, the great ocean conveyor belt, a current that takes 1,000 years to complete a single cycle. Imagine that. A drop of water leaving the surface today will not return to sunlight for 10 centuries. In that time, it will witness silence that cities will never know. It will pass through crushing depths, through canyons darker than the night sky, past glowing creatures and ancient sediments, carrying with it traces of what it has touched. Because water is not forgetful, not at the molecular level. Everywhere it flows, it picks up memory, nutrients from a dying bloom of plankton, minerals leached from the bones of a sunken whale, chemicals left by storms, by ships, by fire. All of it enters the bloodstream of the sea, and the sea circulates it slowly, distributing memory like medicine or poison. The ocean is Earth's first chemist. Before there were forests or bones, it was stirring elements together, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, writing the recipe for life in molecular loops. To this day, every living cell echoes that first aquatic formula. You are built from ocean chemistry, not metaphorically, literally. The salt in your blood, the iron in your veins, the water in your eyes, all carry a lineage older than language, older than land. It is the ocean's memory flowing through you. And yet, the ocean is more than water. It is also information. Scientists now study the biogeochemical signals that drift through seawater, subtle chemical markers left by ecosystems. When coral bleaches, it leaves a trace. When algae bloom, they release whispers of their presence. When great migrations pass through, the molecular trail remains. By reading these signals, we can reconstruct the ocean's inner life, not just its surface, but its moods, its traumas, its healing. A single liter of seawater contains over 20 million viruses. They are not diseases, they are messages. They shape microbial communities, transfer genes, rewrite the rules of evolution. The ocean is not silent. It murmurs molecular secrets through every current. When a fish dies, its essence dissolves into the water around it. When a glacier melts, it adds its ancient chemistry to the mix. The ocean does not reject, it absorbs. And in doing so, it changes, not instantly, but inevitably. That is the pulse. Change without rush, memory without agenda. Even carbon dioxide, exhaled into the air, eventually finds its way into the ocean's arms. Some of it sinks to the bottom, locked away in the cold, buried in the lungs of the earth for thousands of years. This is the ocean's breath. Inhale, exhale, over millennia. It is a pulse so slow, we barely notice it. But we are a part of it, whether we know it or not. Our industry, our heat, our choices, they all enter the pulse. The ocean does not resist, but it does respond. Its chemistry is shifting. Its memory is becoming cloudy with unfamiliar compounds, plastic polymers, pharmaceuticals, heavy metals. New stories the sea never asked to learn. And yet, even now, it keeps moving, keeps mixing, because that is its nature, to hold, to carry, to pulse. The molecular dance continues, with or without our awareness. But perhaps, by slowing down, by listening, we can begin to feel it, not as noise, but as presence. The presence of something ancient and intelligent and vast. A network not made of wires, but of waves. Not made of data, but of memory. The ocean is not a mirror. It is a mind, one that forgets nothing, but reveals only what we're ready to learn. And what it holds in its depths may not be secrets, but reminders of who we are, of where we came from, of what happens when memory moves slowly enough to become wisdom. Rain begins where silence begins, in the sky, far above the noise of our daily lives. There, in the invisible spaces between evaporation and return, a memory forms. It starts with warmth. The sun kisses the ocean, and water rises, leaving behind the salt, but taking with it the memory of touch. What lifts into the sky is not empty vapor, but a message A cloud is a gathering of memories, suspended fragments of what was once a lake, a sea, a teardrop. Tiny particles cling to these rising vapors, dust, pollen, soot, even microbes, and in doing so, the cloud becomes a storyteller, a carrier of fragments from every place the wind has passed. We do not always realize that a single droplet may have traveled halfway around the world before falling. Rain in a forest might begin over a desert. Rain in your garden might carry the breath of another continent. And when the cloud grows heavy, when the sky can no longer hold its secrets, rain begins. It does not fall in anger, but in surrender. Rain is release. It touches everything, stone and root, feather and fur, skin and soil. And with each touch, it leaves a trace. And it gathers one, because water remembers. Rain, in its descent, washes the air. It binds with pollutants, cleanses particulates, gathers invisible threads of human and planetary breath. Scientists have found that rain carries thousands of microbial species, lifted into the sky, then returned gently to Earth. This is not chaos. It is communication. Rain is part of a planetary exchange, not just of moisture, but of life. It seeds forests. It wakes seeds. It nourishes fungi that speak to trees. It speaks in patterns, drizzle, deluge, murmur, thunder. Its rhythms are ancestral. Every culture has listened to rain. We sing to it. We dance beneath it. We write poems in its echo. And always, we fall quiet when it arrives. There is something in rain that calls for stillness. Perhaps it is the sound, soft percussion on rooftops and leaves, a lullaby older than language. Or perhaps it is something deeper, the sense that rain is the return of something lost, a homecoming from sky to soil. In its brief fall, rain carries memory between realms, from ocean to atmosphere, from tree to river, from blood to ground. It reminds us that nothing is ever truly gone, only transformed, only lifted, carried, returned. Even after it lands, rain continues its journey. Some of it sinks into roots, becoming sap, becoming fruit, becoming life. Some of it runs across the earth, carving rivers, shaping canyons, etching the land with patience. Some of it evaporates once more, rising again, memory in motion. We call it the water cycle. But really, it is a memory cycle, an eternal return. A raindrop that falls on your hand today may have once fallen on the face of a dinosaur, a poet, a sacred stone. There is no new water, only water in motion, only memory traveling in circles. In this way, rain becomes sacred, not because it is rare, but because it connects all things. To stand in the rain is to stand in communion, with sky and sea, with history and biology, with the soft, endless gesture of the planet remembering itself. Even acid rain, rain polluted by our actions, tells a story. It is a warning, a feedback loop, the sky holding up a mirror. It speaks to us in chemistry and consequence. It asks, gently, that we listen better. Because rain is not just water. It is whisper. It is reflection. It is rhythm. It is the language the earth speaks when it wants to be heard softly. And if we learn to listen, not just to the sound, but to the story, we begin to hear something deeper. A quiet agreement. An ancestral code. The earth saying, I remember you. Do you remember me? You are the ocean in miniature. Salt water moves through you, in arteries and veins, in glands and cells, in silence and surge. Tears, sweat, and blood. Three ancient waters still flowing through the modern body. Each one a messenger of something older. Each one a language of the sea. Start with tears. We cry salt. Why? Why would the body use such precious minerals to express grief, joy, relief? The answer may lie in deep time, when our ancestors first left the water but carried the ocean with them. The salt in our tears mirrors the composition of Earth's primordial seas. It is not mimicry. It is memory, a biochemical inheritance. When you cry, you do not just release emotion. You release a molecular history of coral reefs, volcanic vents, tides, and storms. A baby's first tear is not just a sign of life. It is the ocean speaking again through a new voice. And what of sweat? It cools us. It cleanses us. But it, too, is salt water, a quiet exhale of the ocean inside. In moments of fear, effort, heat, the body remembers water. Sweat is not shame. It is a signal that we are alive and still shaped by the environment that first made us. Evolution left us these clues, reminders in the skin of where we began. We did not simply emerge from the ocean. We are still partially submerged. Our biology has not forgotten. And then there is blood, the river within. It carries oxygen, yes. It delivers nutrients, yes. But it also carries salt, the same essential ions that filled the ancient oceans billions of years ago. Chloride, sodium, potassium, magnesium. These are not random. They are the echoes of tides, now trapped in vessels. Red blood cells drift like plankton once did, suspended in plasma that flows with tidal rhythm. Your heart beats with the memory of waves. Your pulse is a shoreline. And yet, blood is not just water. It is story. It records illness, immunity, inheritance. It remembers every virus it has fought, every nutrient it has carried. It holds ancestral signals passed from mother to child, a whispered chain of adaptation and resilience. Even trauma leaves molecular fingerprints in the blood. We are not just bodies. We are memory in motion. And all of it, tears, sweat, blood, whispers of the ocean trying to remember itself through us. When we grieve, the body returns to water. When we run, the body sheds its oceanic heat. When we bleed, the sea reclaims its color. It is poetic, yes, but it is also chemical. The link is literal, not symbolic. The ocean is not out there beyond the shore. It is in here, behind the eyes, beneath the skin, within the breath. This is why water heals. Why floating calms us. Why hot baths soothe the nervous system. Water is home. Even our dreams drift like currents, fluid, formless, resting in a liquid logic that mirrors the womb. Because before we were born, we floated, suspended in amniotic waters so chemically similar to the sea that it is sometimes called the private ocean. There, we developed ears to hear the world, fingers to touch it, lungs to one day breathe its air. But first, we were water beings. And we never stopped being them. Perhaps that's why grief feels like drowning. Why passion burns like tides. Why love flows and floods and breaks its banks. Emotion is fluid. Consciousness too. And water is the carrier. You are not just made of water. You are moved by it. Every tear you've ever cried is a message from the deepest part of yourself. Every drop of sweat is a page in your living history. Every heartbeat is a ripple in a vast, inherited sea. We often forget, but the body remembers. It always remembers, in its salt, in its rhythms, in the quiet way it continues to flow. Silence has a color. It is pale blue. It is the stillness of a glacier, the hush of snow falling on ancient ice. And within that silence, memory sleeps. For millions of years, the world has been writing its story in frozen ink. Glaciers are more than ice. They are archives. Each layer of snow that fell, year after year, century after century, pressed the past into permanence. Air bubbles became words. Dust became punctuation. Volcanic ash became chapters. And over time, what began as snow became a library. We call them ice cores, slender cylinders drilled from deep within glaciers. To hold one is to hold time. The deepest ice cores reach back over 800,000 years. They hold the breath of mammoths, of forests that no longer exist, of skies untouched by industry. They whisper of times when humans were not yet a thought in the mind of Earth. Within these cores, we can read the story of our planet's heartbeat, the rise and fall of carbon dioxide, the inhale and exhale of epochs. We can see moments when the Earth warmed and moments when she froze. We see the shadow of asteroid strikes, the echoes of great fires, the fingerprints of vanished storms. Glaciers are listeners. They do not judge. They do not intervene. They simply record. Even now, they remember. And yet, they are disappearing. In the last century, glaciers have begun to retreat, to melt. What took millennia to form now dissolves in decades. It is not only water that is lost, it is memory. Glacial melt is a kind of forgetting. And yet, paradoxically, as glaciers die, they speak more clearly. Their melting releases what they have long kept hidden: ancient viruses, dormant bacteria, pollen from extinct flora, ash from forgotten fires. Each drop of glacial melt is a message from the past that could not remain silent. Some of these messages warn us of past climate shifts, of how quickly life can change, of the fragility of the systems we believe to be eternal. Others are more mysterious. In Siberia, woolly mammoths have emerged from melting permafrost, flesh intact, hair preserved, as if waking from a deep sleep. In Antarctica, organisms trapped in ice for millions of years are stirring once more. These are not metaphors. They are real. Time is thawing, and with it, the boundary between past and present grows thinner. To walk upon a glacier is to walk upon layers of memory, footprints echoing across centuries. But fewer now have that chance. The great ice shelves crack and groan, and sometimes vanish overnight. It is easy to feel sorrow in this loss, and we should, but perhaps we can also feel reverence, because the glacier, in melting, gives us one last gift: knowledge. If we listen, if we read its watery script before it fades. Imagine this: a single snowflake falls, lands on a polar cap, and is buried. That snowflake might become part of a glacial layer that someone will drill through 10,000 years later. And in that snowflake, they will find trace elements from a distant wildfire, or an industrial city, or a volcanic eruption half a world away. That one snowflake, meaningless alone, becomes part of a sentence in Earth's autobiography. Now multiply that by billions. That is a glacier, an ocean paused, a memory held in suspension. Even the shape of a glacier tells a story. Its crevasses are fractures of pressure and time. Its surface etchings map the motion of the Earth's crust. Its melt patterns reveal where the warmth has crept in. We study it with drones, satellites, spectrometers. But it is also worth simply sitting beside it. To listen, to hear what slow water sounds like when it chooses to wait. There is a humility in ice, a patience. It waits for us to understand. And we, impatient children of a warming age, have only just begun to read what the ice has long preserved. The glacier does not fear death. It knows it will return, as cloud, as river, as snow again. But the stories it carries will change, unless we remember them, unless we become the next layer of memory that the Earth will hold. And so, when the ice melts, we must not look away. We must witness. And remember, because in doing so, we become the glacier's voice. What if water is not only alive, but listening? What if every droplet, every molecule, is holding a secret we have not yet learned to ask. Science has long seen water as a passive player, a solvent, a carrier, a stage upon which life performs. But some now wonder, is water not also an actor? A witness? A memory keeper? In the 1990s, a controversial idea surfaced that water could remember substances once dissolved in it, even after all physical traces were gone. The theory, known as water memory, was met with skepticism. It challenged the known rules of chemistry and biology. And yet, it lingers, because something in it feels possible. Perhaps not in the way it was first proposed, but in something deeper, something quantum. At the molecular level, water behaves strangely. Its molecules don't merely move, they dance. They form fleeting structures, patterns of alignment, clusters that come together and dissolve in microseconds. This behavior is not random. It suggests that water has a kind of coherence, an ability to organize itself in response to energy, sound, even thought. In quantum biology, we see that the boundaries between the physical and the informational begin to blur. Some researchers suggest that water molecules can resonate with electromagnetic fields, retaining a kind of imprint of what they've encountered. Others have studied how water responds to intention, changing crystallization patterns when exposed to music, words, prayer. Skeptics dismiss these claims. And yet, the questions remain. What if water is sensitive to emotional frequencies? What if its molecular lattice remembers trauma, or peace, or touch? We know this much. Water is not inert. It participates in photosynthesis, in neurotransmission, in cell communication. It is not just around the action. It is inside it. It connects DNA strands. It folds proteins. It shapes the very architecture of biology. Some scientists now speak of water as a liquid crystal, something between fluid and form, chaos and coherence. A medium for information as much as matter. This may be why water is so difficult to define. It refuses category. It flows, but also binds. It reacts, but also remembers. It evaporates, but never truly leaves. In the brain, water makes up over 75% of our neural tissue. Is it only cushioning, or is it participating in thought? Could the brain's water be a carrier of subtle, unmeasured information? In quantum theory, there are moments when particles exist in multiple states at once. Could water molecules do the same? Could they act as portals between the physical and the potential, between reality and memory? No one knows for sure, but the questions are growing louder. Because water doesn't behave like other substances. It breaks its own rules. It expands when frozen. It stores heat better than almost anything else. It forms surface tension strong enough to support small creatures walking on it, as if it were solid. Its anomalies are not flaws. They are clues. Clues that water is not only physical, but informational, perhaps even relational. We speak to water without knowing we do. In every heartbeat, in every bath, in every glass we drink or river we pass by. And maybe, just maybe, it speaks back. Not in words, but in pattern, in feeling. In the quiet way its molecules arrange themselves into messages we have not yet learned to read. Imagine that a lake remembers every footstep ever taken on its shore. That rain remembers the trees it once nourished. That oceans remember the boats, the voices, the tears spilled into them. Not as human memory, not as images or language, but as vibration, as frequency, as invisible shape. Water, in this view, is not passive. It is sentient in a way we cannot yet define. Not conscious, perhaps, but receptive, attuned. A recording device not made by humans, but by nature. So when you drink a glass of water, perhaps you are drinking more than hydration. Perhaps you are taking in history, impression, possibility. And when you bathe, perhaps water does not simply clean you. Perhaps it listens to you, absorbs your stress, your silence, your peace. Is this science? Is this poetry? Perhaps it is both. For what is science, if not the patient poetry of observation? And what is poetry, if not the science of attention? Water invites both. It invites us to wonder, to question, to remember. Because maybe, in some hidden language, water already remembers us. Each night, you disappear. You lie down, close your eyes, and your body lets go of gravity, of thought, of time. You drift, not into stillness, but into motion. Because sleep is not the absence of activity. It is its own kind of flow. A current, a tide, and at the center of it, water. The brain, though solid in appearance, is a world of water. Soft, porous, alive with fluid motion. 3/4 of its mass is liquid, and at night, that water moves. This motion is not chaotic. It follows rhythms, pulses, waves. It forms part of what scientists now call the glymphatic system, a vast, newly discovered network, like a lymphatic river within the brain, that activates mostly during sleep. It is, in a sense, the brain's tide. During the day, as we think, move, feel, the brain accumulates debris, waste proteins, chemical byproducts, exhausted fragments of thought. But at night, when consciousness loosens its grip, this river begins to flow. Cerebrospinal fluid rushes in through channels between cells, washing the brain in cool, cleansing waves. This is not metaphor. It is measured. It is as if the brain dreams in water. The cleansing is vital. Without it, toxins accumulate. Diseases take root. Memory falters. Emotion becomes heavy. But with it, the mind resets. Emotions soften. Memories are sifted, reordered, stored, like pebbles settling at the bottom of a clear stream. The glymphatic tide is strongest during deep sleep, specifically during slow-wave sleep, a time of low brain activity but deep internal restoration. This is the sleep that leaves us feeling rested, whole, and water makes it possible. During this stage, brain cells actually shrink. They contract to make room for the tide to move, like trees pulling back their roots to let the river run. It is a cooperation, a trust, between structure and flow, and it happens every night. We do not command it. We cannot speed it up. We must surrender to it. And in that surrender, healing begins. Some researchers believe this inner cleansing is not just about detoxifying the brain, but also about memory itself, that the glymphatic flow might carry emotional residues, sorting what stays and what dissolves. This may be why sleep softens heartbreak, eases grief, clarifies confusion, because the river knows what to keep and what to let go. It is editing the story of our day. Sometimes, it lets things drift down to the seabed of forgetting. Other times, it files them in glowing coral reefs of memory. but always it is moving. Even dreams, strange as they seem, may be part of this process. The brain replays, reimagines, reconstructs, not randomly, but with a kind of watery logic. Neuroscientists have found that dreams help solve problems, heal emotional wounds, reinforce learning, as if the dreaming mind is a diver exploring the depths. So we sleep, not to go still, but to flow inward. The same way rivers run beneath cities, unseen but essential. The same way tides reshape shorelines, while the world rests. This is why chronic sleep loss is not simply tiring. It is a kind of drought. Without sleep, the brain cannot cleanse itself. Emotions stay jagged. Memories blur. The inner water turns stagnant. But with sleep, we are restored, not only in body, but in soul. It is humbling to know that we must go soft to grow strong, that we must release to remember, that even the mind, that fortress of control, needs a tide to remain whole. In this way, sleep is sacred. It is not a break from life. It is part of life's deepest rhythm. And water, the same water that once formed oceans, clouds, ice, now flows within your head, gently rinsing the corridors of thought. As you dream, you are afloat in an inner sea. Each night, you are reborn, not through struggle, but through surrender. This is the gift of sleep. This is the grace of water. Before laboratories, before instruments, before equations, there were rivers and the people who sat beside them, listening, wondering. The first science was silence, and the first scientists were the ones who noticed that water was more than water. They gave it names, not chemical names, but sacred ones. Water was not substance, it was presence, a goddess, a soul, a whisper from the beyond. In ancient Egypt, the Nile was not simply a river. It was the bloodstream of the god Osiris, a living vein that pulsed with fertility and memory. In Hindu philosophy, the Ganges is not merely water. It is Ma Ganga, a divine mother carrying karma and redemption in her silken current. To bathe in her is to remember who you are and what you are becoming. In the Norse myths, there is Mimir's well, a sacred spring beneath the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. There, memory is stored. Wisdom rests. Even gods must offer something dear to drink from it, because the water knows what the mind forgets. In Shinto, water is purification. The spirit of a river or waterfall is kami, a sacred force, both seen and unseen. And in countless indigenous traditions, from the Pacific Northwest to the deserts of Australia, water is a storyteller, a memory keeper, a spirit that connects earth, sky, and ancestry. Even Plato, the philosopher of reason, described the soul as flowing, a stream within the self. And Thales, the earliest known Greek philosopher, declared water to be the arche, the first principle, the origin of all things. These were not poetic flourishes. They were philosophies, worldviews. To these cultures, water was not inert. It was aware, not conscious like a person, but alive in a way that transcended biology. Modern science, in its youth, dismissed these views as myth. But now, as we probe deeper into quantum fields, into molecular behavior, into the strange coherence of water, we find ourselves returning to the river's edge, not to believe, but to listen, because perhaps the ancients were not primitive. Perhaps they were simply tuned to frequencies we have learned to ignore, the rhythms of tide and rainfall, the subtle mood of a stream, the way water carries sound and story and presence. To drink from a spring was once to commune with the sacred. To pour water was to speak to the spirits. To cross an ocean was to enter a realm where time and space dissolved. Even the afterlife, in many traditions, involved a river, the Styx, the Lethe, the sacred crossing between this life and whatever lies beyond. Water was the veil, the passage, the medium between form and formlessness. And so we washed the dead in sacred water. We anointed the newborn. We wept beside wells and threw coins into fountains, not for luck, but for remembrance. In dreams, water still carries meaning. It floods, it drowns, it renews. Therapists say, watch how the water behaves. It tells you how your soul is flowing. Even now, when we seek peace, we return to it, to lakes, to oceans, to baths and showers that quiet the mind. Why? Because somewhere within us, beyond culture, beyond education, we remember. We remember that water is not just cleansing. It is connecting. It speaks to the part of us that knows how to feel before it knows how to speak. The part that listens rather than explains. The ancients knew this. And now, perhaps, we are beginning to know it again. Not in temples, but in labs. Not with myths, but with measurements. But the mystery remains. Because the more we understand water, the more it slips through our definitions. It is liquid, yet holds form. It is matter, yet it carries mind. It is memory, emotion, soul. And perhaps myth, rather than fiction, is simply a language for truths we have not yet proven. Truths the water has carried all along. The tide rises. The tide falls. It is not thinking, but it is responding. Not speaking, but still, somehow, saying something. This is the language of the tides. A language without syllables, without sentences, but full of rhythm, full of return. We have always felt that water speaks. In its crashing waves, its stillness before storms, its dripping echoes through ancient caves. But science is beginning to listen too. Not to words, but to patterns. To what is carried from place to place within every ripple. Because water moves not just matter, but message. Take sound. Water carries sound 4 times faster than air. Dolphins, whales, and fish communicate across vast distances with pulses, clicks, and tones that travel through salt water like music through a violin. And not just animals. Some scientists now study the way certain water structures react to sound and vibration, changing shape in response to frequency. This is cymatics, the geometry of resonance. When pure water is vibrated by a particular tone, it forms delicate, symmetrical patterns, snowflake-like, lattice-like, as if the water is translating sound into shape. Some call this art. Some call it coincidence. But some ask, softly, is this a kind of listening? Is water not just reactive, but receptive? Does it remember the sounds it has heard? Experiments, still controversial, have claimed that water can retain structural impressions of substances once dissolved in it, even after dilution beyond measurement. They call it water's memory. Other studies, still more speculative, suggest that water molecules may cluster in ways that reflect the environments they've passed through, the electromagnetic fields, the temperatures, even the emotions of those nearby. Skepticism is healthy, but curiosity is vital. Because if water can respond to intention, to frequency, to energy, then what else might it carry? Could it be a recorder of time? Each tide, not just a movement, but a message. The moon speaks, and the sea rises. Gravity calls, and the waves answer. This dance has been going on for 4 billion years. No voice, but unmistakable pull. Even the human body, more than half water, rises and falls with this tide. Some traditions believe the full moon stirs emotion because it stirs the inner ocean. Because water, both within and without, is connected. What if the water in your cells is not separate from the ocean? What if the hydrogen in your veins once floated in the breath of stars? It has traveled through cloud, through glacier, through creature. Each molecule of water has a history you cannot trace, but can feel. When you drink, you take in the past. When you breathe, you let it go. And in this movement, in this inhale, exhale, flow, return, you become part of the great communication. We speak without knowing that we are speaking. We listen without realizing what we're hearing. What if the oceans are more than habitat? What if they are archive? A liquid library of every vibration, every storm, every sorrow. Water remembers the shape of continents that no longer exist. It remembers the thunder of dinosaurs, the rhythm of ancient rain. And maybe it remembers the human voice when we sang to it as sacred, the chants, the lullabies, the poems whispered to rivers now long vanished. Perhaps the water still carries them, not as language, but as frequency, as feeling. Even today, when we weep, our tears carry stress hormones, emotional chemistry, fragments of story. And those tears join the water cycle. They fall into soil, into groundwater, into streams. And so, even pain finds its way back to the sea, where it is held, where it is rocked by moonlight and silence. Perhaps water is where emotion goes to be metabolized by the earth. Perhaps water is where memory lives until the body is ready to remember, a message held gently in the folds of a wave. This is not a science fully understood, but it is a wonder worth walking toward, because water may be the most ancient listener and the most enduring voice. A voice without language, but not without meaning. A tide that pulls at our bones, not with force, but with memory. A whisper that echoes across oceans, across time, and perhaps across consciousness itself. Beneath the questions, beneath the data, beneath the endless hum of curiosity, there is a silence. Not the silence of absence, but of presence. The kind you feel standing by the sea at night, the stars overhead, the salt in the air, the hush between the waves. This is where the journey ends. Not with answers, but with stillness. We have wandered through time, from molecules to myths, from glaciers to tears, from ancient rivers to the breath of the moon. And still, the water flows. It does not explain itself. It does not offer proof. It offers only presence. There is something deeply human about our longing to know, to measure, to analyze, to extract meaning from every ripple. But what if water's gift is not what it remembers, but what it allows us to forget, to soften, to dissolve? In water, we release. We float. We return. Every drop we drink, every wave we watch, becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the world, but the soul within it. Water does not need us to believe in it, to revere it, to praise it. It is not waiting to be understood. It simply is, holding mountains and messages, whispers and storms. And somewhere beneath the churning, there is always stillness. Stillness that holds the memory of the earth. Stillness that holds the forgetting, too. Because memory is not just what remains. It is also what is released. The ocean takes in what we no longer need. Our tears, our words, our histories, and gives back something quieter, a rhythm, a breath, a lullaby. It's no coincidence that we sleep so deeply by the sea, that we heal in its sound, that we dream in its rhythm. Because somewhere inside us, we remember being water. Not metaphorically, literally. Every embryo begins in fluid. Every cell carries the chemistry of ancient seas. We are made of it, moved by it, return to it at the end. Even in death, the body releases moisture, returns to the soil, to the stream, to the tide. Water closes the loop. Memory dissolves into silence. And so we arrive at the final current, not with fanfare, but with a sigh. A long exhale into the dark, into the deep, where the ocean does not forget, but does not hold tightly either. It flows. It lets go. And so should we. Because not everything is meant to be known. Some things are meant to be felt, to be honored, to be surrendered to. Like a wave, we may never prove that water holds memory, but in every moment we stand beside it, listening, breathing, resting, we feel that it remembers something we've forgotten. And in that remembering, we sleep more deeply. We dream more fully. We soften, back into ourselves, back into the world, back into the water. Somewhere on a quiet shore, a wave places something at your feet. You bend to see what it is, a piece of glass. Sea glass, soft around the edges, cool in your palm, worn smooth by time. It was once sharp, once broken, perhaps from a bottle, a window, a life. But the ocean did not throw it away. It held it, tumbled it, taught it the long rhythm of surrender. And now it glows, not in spite of its fracture, but because of it. Driftglass, the memory of what was, softened into something new. We too are made of memory, moments broken, edges rough, words spoken in haste. Things we wish we could unsay, undo, forget. But maybe forgetting isn't the point. Maybe, like the sea, we are meant to keep the shards, but let them be reshaped. By time, by movement, by tides bigger than ourselves. The sea does not rush. It does not judge. It does not cling. It lets go by holding on lightly. And in doing so, it turns what's discarded into treasure, memory into mineral, loss into luminescence. What if we are not here to master time, but to move with it, not to archive every detail, but to let the water work on us? Let the currents take what no longer serves. Let the salt scrub away what is no longer ours to carry. And in time, what remains will shine. So sleep now. Let the tide come in. Let it wash over the day, over the thoughts, over the noise. Let it turn sharpness into smoothness, questions into rhythm. You are not broken. You are becoming. Driftglass. And in the morning, the ocean will still be here, softly remembering, quietly forgetting, and holding everything you've given it. With grace.